Admiral Kale stood slowly, his breathing still heavy from the combat. Around the hangar deck, hundreds of his crew members watched in stunned silence. Never before had they seen their commanding officer defeated in single combat, yet somehow, this moment felt different from a simple military defeat. Min Kim walked to the center of the hangar where everyone could see and hear him clearly. He no longer looked like the terrifying infiltrator who had cut through their security forces. Instead, he appeared as what he truly was, a young man carrying the weight of his people's survival on his shoulders. "I want you all to understand why I came here," Min Kim said, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "Not for revenge, though my people have suffered greatly. Not for conquest, though I could have killed everyone on this ship if that had been my goal." He gestured toward Admiral Kale, who was accepting medical attention from his officers but remained standing. "I came here because 300 years ago your people and mine made a sacred agreement. My ancestor gave his life believing that promise would be kept." Lieutenant Hara stepped forward from the crowd of officers. "What proof do we have that these treaties actually exist? How do we know you are telling the truth about these ancient agreements?" Min Kim reached into his clothing and pulled out a small data device. "This contains copies of the original treaty documents signed by your own Dominion Council. It also contains the complete military records of Dae Kim's service, including mission reports written by Dominion commanders who fought alongside him." He activated the device and holographic images appeared in the air above the hangar deck. The watching crew could see document after document, treaties, battle reports, commendations, and testimonials from Dominion officers praising Dae Kim's courage and skill. Commander Voss studied the documents with growing amazement. "These records show that Dae Kim saved over 50,000 Dominion lives during his years of service. He personally rescued 3 colony ships from pirate attacks. He held the Cathara Pass against impossible odds for 6 days until reinforcements arrived. And in exchange," Min Kim said quietly, "your leaders promised that humanity would be welcomed as equals in the galactic community. They swore that no harm would come to human worlds under Dominion protection." The holographic documents showed the actual treaty language, written in the formal style used for the most important Dominion agreements. Every crew member could read the promises their ancestors had made. "Instead of protection you have given us 50 years of systematic extermination," Min Kim continued. "You have destroyed human colonies, scattered families across the galaxy, and hunted survivors like criminals. You have taken the name of my honored ancestor and used it to justify the murder of his descendants." The hangar fell silent as the weight of his words settled over the crowd. Many crew members looked uncomfortable as they realized the true nature of their war against humanity. Admiral Kale stepped forward, his voice rough but determined. "What you say is true. We have dishonored ourselves and betrayed the memory of your ancestor. The question is, what can be done about it now?" "That depends on you," Min Kim replied. "I am prepared to offer your people a choice that my ancestor never had the chance to make." He walked closer to Admiral Kale, speaking directly to him, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You can continue this war of extermination. You can complete the genocide you started and try to erase all evidence of your broken promises. Many human worlds have already fallen, and the survivors are scattered and weak." The young human's eyes hardened with determination. "But if you choose that path, you will face consequences your leaders never imagined. I am not the only descendant of Dae Kim. There are others trained as I was trained, carrying the same sacred weapons and the same knowledge of your weaknesses." Commander Voss looked alarmed. "How many others?" "Enough," Min Kim said simply. "My people have spent generations preparing for this moment. We knew that someday we would need to claim the honor that was promised to us. We have studied your technology, your tactics, your ships, and your customs. We know you better than you know yourselves." He gestured around the hangar deck. "One human infiltrator defeated over 100 of your best soldiers and reached your most sacred spaces. Imagine what dozens of such warriors could accomplish if they were forced to choose war over peace." The threat was clear, but Min Kim's tone remained calm and reasonable. However, I did not come here to threaten you. I came to offer you a second choice, the chance to honor your ancestors' promises and restore the alliance that should have existed for 3 centuries. Admiral Kale felt a spark of hope despite everything that had happened. What kind of alliance? The same one your leaders promised to Dae Kim, humanity and the Dominion working together as equals, sharing knowledge and resources, protecting each other from common enemies. Min Kim paused, then added, "But this time, the agreement will be enforced by warriors who understand the cost of broken promises." Lieutenant Hera looked puzzled. "What do you mean by enforced?" Min Kim drew his ancestor's ceremonial blade once more, but this time he held it reverently rather than as a weapon. "The descendants of Dae Kim will serve as guardians of the treaty. We will work with Dominion forces to ensure that both sides honor their commitments. Think of us as peacekeepers. Peacekeepers armed with Sacred Order weapons and trained in our most classified combat techniques." Commander Voss observed warily. "Exactly." Min Kim smiled for the first time since removing his mask. "We learned long ago that peace without the ability to enforce it is merely a temporary ceasefire. The alliance between our peoples will be strong because both sides will know the consequences of betrayal." Admiral Kale considered the offer carefully. The alternative, continued war against an enemy that clearly understood Dominion weaknesses, better than anyone had imagined, seemed far worse than accepting human partners who demanded equal treatment. "What assurance do we have that humanity will honor this new alliance?" he asked. "The same assurance my ancestor had when he trusted your people's word," Min Kim replied. "None at all, except the hope that both sides have learned from past mistakes." He sheathed the ceremonial blade and looked around at the watching crew members. "But I can offer you something more concrete. If the Dominion agrees to honor the original treaty and ends all attacks on human worlds, I will share the intelligence I gathered from your ship's computer systems." "What intelligence?" Admiral Kale asked sharply. "Complete battle plans for your remaining campaigns against human colonies. Ship deployment schedules, attack patterns. Supply line information." Min Kim's expression grew serious. "Everything your enemies would need to destroy your fleet and cripple your empire." The hangar erupted in shocked murmurs. The crew realized that this young human had not just defeated their security forces. He had potentially gathered enough information to destroy the entire Dominion war effort. "You would give us back our own stolen intelligence?" Commander Voss asked suspiciously. "I would give you more than that," Min Kim replied. "I would give you the locations of the hidden human fleets that have been preparing to strike at your supply bases. I would share the defense plans of human worlds you haven't discovered yet. I would tell you everything that could be used to complete your genocide." He paused to let the magnitude of his offer sink in. "In exchange, you stop the killing and honor the promises made to my ancestor. You treat humanity as equals instead of enemies. You prove that the Dominion still has some honor left." Admiral Kale looked around at his officers and crew. He could see uncertainty and hope warring in their faces. For 50 years, they had been told that humans were dangerous enemies who had to be destroyed. Now they were being offered the chance to turn those enemies into powerful allies. "I cannot make this decision alone," he said finally. "This requires approval from the Dominion High Council." "Then contact them," Min Kim said. "Tell them that the descendant of Dae Kim offers them a choice between honor and destruction. Tell them that the future of both our peoples hangs in the balance." He walked toward the hangar exit, then turned back for one final statement. "I will remain on this ship until you have an answer. But know this, whether your leaders choose alliance or continued war, humanity will survive. The only question is whether the Dominion will survive alongside us." As Min Kim left the hangar, Admiral Kale realized that everything had changed. The war against humanity could no longer be won through simple military force. The choice now was between accepting humans as equals or facing the consequences of their ancestors' broken promises. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same again. The news spread through the ship like fire. By dinner time, every alien on the Nexus Prime knew about the sparring match. The communication networks buzzed with messages about the human cleaner who had agreed to fight Commander Vextar. In the mess hall, groups of warriors gathered around tables, laughing and making bets. The odds were not good for Tejo. Most aliens were betting that the fight would last less than 20 seconds. Some said Vextar would win so fast that spectators might miss it if they blinked. Tejo sat alone at a small table in the corner of the human section. His food grew cold as he listened to the noise around him. Every few minutes, an alien would point at him and say something to their friends. Then they would all laugh. Lieutenant Commander Sojin walked over and sat down across from him. She was one of the few humans with an officer rank on the ship. Her job was to handle communications between the human crew and the alien commanders. She was smart, careful, and had worked hard to earn respect from the aliens. Tejo, she said quietly, what were you thinking? He looked up at her. Sojin had been kind to him since he started working on the ship. She sometimes brought him books to read and asked how he was doing. She was one of the few people who knew he had been in the military before taking this job. I did not have much choice, he said. If I had refused, it would have made things worse for all the humans here. Sojin leaned forward and lowered her voice. You could still back out, say you are sick. Say you hurt your back lifting something heavy. No one would blame you. Yes, they would, Tejo replied. They would say humans are cowards who make excuses to avoid fighting. Every human on this ship would suffer for it. Around them, the noise grew louder. More aliens were entering the mess hall for dinner. Many of them looked over at the human section and pointed at Tejo. Some took pictures with their devices. Do you know anything about Vextar? Sojin asked. Tejo nodded. I have heard the stories. He has been fighting for 30 years. He won the grand tournament on Valkyrie Prime 7 times. He defeated a Gorek champion in single combat. Even other Valkyrie fear him. Then you know this is impossible, Sojin said. He will hurt you badly. Maybe kill you even if he does not mean to. Tejo was quiet for a moment. He watched the aliens at the other tables. They were having fun, treating tomorrow's fight like entertainment. To them, he was not a real person. He was just something to laugh at. There are things you do not know about me, he said finally. Sojin studied his face. What kind of things? Instead of answering, Tejo slowly pulled off his work gloves. His hands were covered in scars. Old cuts, burn marks, and calluses marked his fingers and palms. Some of the scars looked like they came from knives. Others looked like rope burns or chemical burns. Sojin stared at his hands. In all the months she had known him, she had never seen him without gloves. Where did these come from? She asked. The kind of work I used to do, Tejo said, putting his gloves back on. Before I came here, you said you were in the military. But you never said what you did. Tejo looked around the mess hall. No one was close enough to hear them talking, but he kept his voice low anyway. I was in a special unit, he said. We did jobs that regular soldiers could not do, dangerous jobs. Jobs that the government could not admit happened. Sojin felt a chill run down her back. What kind of jobs? The kind where most people do not come back, Tejo said simply, before. Sojin could ask more questions. A loud voice interrupted them. A group of Valkyrie warriors had approached their table. The leader was Kethver, the young warrior who had laughed at Tejo earlier. Human cleaner, Kethver said, his voice carrying across the mess hall. Are you ready for tomorrow? The entire hall went quiet. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to look at their table. Tejo could feel the weight of their stares. I will be there, he said calmly. Kethver laughed. Good, I have bet 50 credits that you will not last 10 seconds. Do not disappoint me by lasting longer. The other Valkyrie with him laughed too. One of them leaned forward and spoke to Tejo. Directly, I hope you have someone to take care of your belongings after tomorrow. You will not need them anymore. That is enough, Sojin said, standing up. Her voice carried the authority of her rank. Return to your tables. The Valkyrie looked at her with amusement but did not move. Ah, the human officer defends her pet, Kethver said. How sweet. Will you fight for him too? I said that is enough. Sojin repeated, her voice harder now. Kethver shrugged and turned back to Teho. See you tomorrow, little cleaner. Try not to cry too much when Vexstar breaks your bones. The group walked away, still laughing. Slowly, the noise and the mess hall returned to normal. But Teho could still feel eyes watching him. Sojin sat back down. Her hands were shaking slightly from anger. You cannot do this, she said. I will talk to Captain Yeon-woo. She can stop this fight. No, Teho said firmly. The captain cannot interfere with warrior traditions. If she tries to stop it, the aliens will lose respect for all human officers. That includes you, Sojin knew he was right. The Galactic Coalition had strict rules about respecting each species' cultural practices. Fighting challenges were an important part of warrior culture for many alien species. Then what do we do? She asked. Tadaho was quiet for a long time. Around them, the mess hall began to empty as aliens finished their meals and returned to their duties or quarters. Tell me, he said eventually, what do the aliens know about human military history? Sojin thought about it. Not much. They know we have armies and fight wars, but they think our wars are small and simple compared to what other species have done. What about human combat training? They think it is basic. Crude compared to their advanced fighting techniques. Teho nodded slowly. Good, let them keep thinking that. I do not understand. Tomorrow, when I fight Vexstar, the aliens will learn something new about humans, Teho said. Something they were not expecting. Sojin leaned closer. What will they learn? Teho stood up and picked up his food tray. Most of his dinner was still untouched. They will learn that humans have been fighting wars since before we discovered fire, he said. They will learn that every human is born on a world where everything wants to kill them. And they will learn that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone ignores. He walked away, leaving Sojin sitting alone at the table. She watched him go, her mind racing with questions she was afraid to ask. Across the mess hall, aliens continued to laugh and make jokes about tomorrow's fight. They were planning to bring food and drinks to make it a celebration. Some were even inviting friends from other ships to watch. None of them noticed the quiet human cleaner, who walked past their tables with steady steps and calm eyes. None of them saw the way he moved, like someone who had learned to walk silently through dangerous places. They were all focused on the entertainment they expected to see tomorrow. They had no idea they were about to witness something that would change how they saw humans forever. In his small quarters that night, Teho sat on his bed and stared out the window at the stars. Tomorrow would be difficult. Not because he was afraid of losing, but because winning would bring its own problems. For 8 months, he had lived in peace. Tomorrow that peace would end, but maybe it was time. Maybe it was time for the galaxy. To see what humans really were, he pulled off his gloves and looked at his scarred hands. Each mark told a story of survival, of missions completed against impossible odds, of a species that had learned to fight not just for victory, but for the right to exist. Tomorrow the aliens would get their entertainment. But they would also get an education they were not expecting. Training Room 1 had never been so full. Aliens packed every available space around the combat area. They stood on benches hung from railings and pressed against the reinforced windows that separated the fighting space from the observation areas. The room itself was huge, designed for large-scale combat training. The floor was covered with a special material that would not break under heavy impacts. The walls were lined with energy shields that could stop even the strongest weapons. Tonight, those shields would only need to contain 2 fighters, Commander. Vexstar stood in the center of the room, warming up his muscles. He moved through a series of combat forms that showed off his natural weapons. His thick gray skin rippled as he flexed his arms. The bone plates along his back shifted and locked into fighting position. His claws extended and retracted as he practiced striking movements. The crowd cheered every time he performed a particularly impressive move. Other Valkyrie warriors called out encouragement and battle cries in their native language. Teho entered the room quietly through a side door. He wore simple exercise clothes instead of his usual work uniform. His movements were calm and steady as he walked to his side of the fighting area. The noise in the room grew louder when the aliens saw him. Laughter mixed with cheers and mocking. Comments. Someone had brought a timer to count how long the fight would last. Others held up signs with betting odds written on them. "Look at him," a Zenthi warrior said to his friends. "He looks scared already." "I almost feel sorry for the little human," a Gorak added. "This will not be much of a fight." Near the observation windows, Sojin stood with the other human crew members. Her face was tight with worry as she watched Taeho prepare for the match. Next to her, Captain Yeon Woo observed the scene with professional interest. Captain Yeon Woo was the highest-ranking human on the ship. She was a skilled diplomat who had worked hard to build good relationships with the alien commanders. She knew more about Taeho's background than she had told anyone, including Sojin. "Should we stop this?" Sojin asked her quietly. "It is too late now," Captain Yeon Woo replied. "If we interfere, it will cause more problems than it solves. But he could be killed." Captain Yeon Woo looked at Taeho, who was doing some light stretching exercises. "I do not think that will happen." "How can you be so calm about this?" Before the captain could answer, a loud horn sounded. The room fell silent as referee Jexkin stepped into the fighting area. He was a tall, thin alien from a neutral species that often served as judges in combat sports. "Warriors and spectators," Jexkin announced, his voice carrying clearly through the room. "This is a friendly sparring match between Commander Vexstar of the Valkyrie Empire and Kim Taeho of the Human Maintenance Crew." More laughter came from the crowd at the formal introduction of a janitor as if he were a real warrior. "The rules are simple," the referee continued. "No weapons, no killing blows. Fight continues until one fighter surrenders or cannot continue. Are both fighters ready?" Vexstar raised his fist and roared. The sound echoed through the room and made several smaller aliens step back in fear. His natural warrior instincts were fully active now, and he looked like the dangerous predator his species had evolved from. Taeho simply nodded to the referee. "Begin!" Jexkin shouted, quickly moving out of the way. Vexstar charged immediately. His strategy was simple: use his superior size and strength to end the fight in the first few seconds. He moved faster than most beings his size should be able to, covering the distance between himself and Taeho. In less than 2 heartbeats, his massive fist swung toward Taeho's head with enough force to crush bone. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the inevitable impact. It never came. Taeho moved at the last possible moment. Not backward, not to the side, but forward and down. He slipped under Vexstar's punch and passed his guard, ending up behind the Valkyrie warrior before anyone could follow what had happened. The crowd's cheers died in their throats. That was not what they had expected to see. Vexstar spun around, confusion clear on his face. The human had moved faster than he thought possible. And the movement had been precise, controlled, not the panicked stumbling of someone lucky enough to avoid being hit. "Interesting," Vexstar said. His respect for his opponent rising slightly, he attacked again, this time with a series of quick strikes designed to overwhelm Taeho with speed and power. His claws slashed through the air where the human had been standing just moments before, but Taeho was not there anymore. He moved like water, flowing around Vexstar's attacks without seeming to hurry. Every time the Valkyrie warrior thought he had the human trapped, Taeho would slip away with minimal effort. The audience began to murmur. This was not going according to plan. How is he doing that? A young Valkyrie asked his commander. "I do not know," the older warrior replied, his eyes fixed on the fight. "I have never seen a human move like that." Vexstar was beginning to breathe harder. Fighting at full speed was exhausting, especially when none of his attacks were landing. He stepped back and studied his opponent more carefully. Taeho stood relaxed, his breathing calm and even. He had not thrown a single punch yet, but he showed no signs of fear or fatigue. His eyes tracked every movement Vexstar made, as if he was reading the alien's intentions before Vexstar himself knew what he was going to do. "You are not what you seem, human," Vexstar said. "I am exactly what I seem," Taeho replied quietly. A cleaner who wants to finish his work and go to bed. This brought some nervous laughter from the crowd, but it was different now. Less confident, Vextar changed his approach. Instead of trying to overwhelm Tejo with brute force, he began to use the advanced combat techniques he had learned in 30 years of fighting. These were moves that had defeated champions from a dozen different species. He feinted left, then spun right, bringing his elbow around in a strike that should have caught Tejo in the ribs, but the human seemed to know it was coming. He stepped into the attack instead of away from it, reducing its power and creating an opening for a counterattack. For the first time in the fight, Tejo struck back. It was not a devastating blow, just a quick jab to Vextar's shoulder. But it landed exactly where it was aimed, and it made the Valkyrie warrior stagger slightly. The room went completely silent. Human had just successfully hit Commander Vextar. A janitor had landed a blow on one of the most feared warriors in the galaxy. Sojin grabbed Captain Yanwu's arm. How is he doing this? Captain Yanwu watched Tejo move into a defensive position, ready for Vextar's next attack. Do you know what humans call their homeworld? She asked. Earth, Sojin replied, confused by the question. Do you know what kind of world Earth is? A garden world? Pleasant climate, abundant resources, peaceful conditions? Captain Yanwu shook her head. That is what we tell other species because the truth scares them. Earth is not a garden world. Sojin, it is a death world. What do you mean? I mean that everything on Earth is trying to kill everything else? The weather can freeze you or cook you. The animals are all predators or prey. The plants produce poisons. Even the tiny organisms that you cannot see will eat you alive if given the chance. Sojin stared at her captain. But our cities, our civilization, We built those cities by fighting the world itself, Captain Yanwu explained. Every human is descended from millions of ancestors who survived on a planet that did not want them to exist. We are all warriors, Sojin. We just forgot how to show it. In the fighting area, Vextar was beginning to understand that he was not facing a weak maintenance worker. The human moved with the confidence of someone who had been in many fights before. His positioning was perfect, his timing was precise, and his eyes never stopped analyzing and calculating. What are you? Vextar asked, breathing harder now. I told you, Tejo said, I am a cleaner. But even as he said it, his body moved into a combat stance that Vextar recognized. It was the position of a trained killer, someone who had learned to fight not for sport or honor, but for survival. The crowd sensed the change in the fight's atmosphere. The laughter and jokes had stopped completely. Instead, there was a tension in the air that made everyone lean forward to see what would happen next. Vextar realized that he was no longer fighting for entertainment. Somehow, without anyone noticing, this had become a real battle. And for the first time in many years, he was not certain he would win. The human janitor stood calmly in the center of the fighting area, waiting for the next attack, but his eyes held something that Vextar had seen before in the faces of the most dangerous opponents he had ever fought. They held the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly how to kill. Vextar attacked with renewed fury. The realization that his opponent was dangerous had awakened his true warrior instincts. He no longer held back. Using every technique he had learned in 3 decades of combat, his claws swept in deadly arcs, each strike powerful enough to tear through metal. His movements became a blur of controlled violence, the kind of fighting that had made him legendary among his people. But Tejo matched him move for move. Every slash was deflected or avoided. Every grab was escaped. Every attempt to pin the human down failed as Tejo flowed around the attacks like smoke. The crowd watched in stunned silence. This was not possible. Humans were supposed to be weak, slow, and clumsy. Yet here was one fighting toe-to-toe with their greatest champion. Impossible, whispered a Zenthi commander. Their species profile says they have no natural weapons, limited strength, and basic reflexes. Maybe the profile is wrong, another alien replied. In the fighting area, Vextar was beginning to feel something he had not experienced in years: doubt. The human was not just surviving his attacks, he was studying them, learning from them. Adapting to them, it reminded Vexstar of the stories his grandfather used to tell about hunting the shadow cats on his homeworld. Shadow cats were not the strongest or fastest predators, but they were the most patient. They would watch their prey for hours, learning every habit and weakness, before striking with perfect precision. The human fought like a shadow cat. As these thoughts flashed through Vexstar's mind, memories began to surface in Teiho's consciousness. Memories he had tried to forget. The jungle planet of Kepler 442b. Rain, falling like bullets through the thick canopy. The mission briefing had been simple: rescue the diplomatic team, eliminate the hostile forces, extract before enemy reinforcements arrived. It had not been simple. Teiho remembered crawling through mud and thorns for 6 hours, getting into position. His team of 12 had been reduced to 3 by the time they reached the enemy compound. The odds were 40-1 against them. They had won anyway, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through patience, planning, and the willingness to do whatever was necessary to complete the mission. The memory made Teiho's movements sharper, more focused. Vexstar noticed the change immediately. "Now you show your true face," the Valkyrie warrior said, breathing heavily. Teiho did not reply. He was remembering other missions now. The space station assault, where his unit had held off 300 enemy soldiers for 18 hours. The hostage rescue on Proxima Station, where they had fought their way through a maze of corridors, filled with traps and ambushes. Each memory brought back skills he had tried to forget. Combat instincts that had been buried under months of peaceful routine were awakening. He began to press forward, taking the offensive for the first time in the fight. His attacks were not wild or flashy like Vexstar's. They were precise, economical, designed to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. A strike to a nerve cluster here, pressure on a joint there, targeting weak points that most fighters never thought to defend. Vexstar found himself giving ground. The human was no longer just defending and dodging, he was hunting. "What unit were you in?" Vexstar asked between exchanges. "Silent Thunder," Teiho replied without thinking. The name meant nothing to the aliens watching, but Captain Yanwu went pale when she heard it. "What is Silent Thunder?" Sojin asked her. Captain Yanwu's voice was barely a whisper. "They were a special operations unit, Black Ops. The missions that officially never happened were? They were disbanded 3 years ago. The entire unit was declared killed in action on a classified mission. Officially, none of them survived." Sojin looked at Teiho with new eyes. "But he did survive, apparently." In the fighting area, the battle was reaching a new level of intensity. Vexstar was using techniques that few beings in the galaxy had ever seen. Ancient Valkyrie combat forms that were taught only to the elite, warriors of his people, but Teiho countered each one with something from Earth's military tradition. Boxing combinations learned in back-alley gyms. Martial arts techniques perfected over thousands of years. Wrestling moves developed on playing fields and battlefields across human space. The aliens watching began to understand that they were seeing something historic. This was not just a sparring match between two individuals. It was a clash between two completely different approaches to combat. The Valkyrie way was based on strength, natural weapons, and overwhelming force. It was the path of the apex predator, evolved on a world where only the strongest survived. The human way was different. It was based on adaptability, endurance, and tactical thinking. It was the path of the persistence hunter, evolved on a world where survival required outsmarting. Stronger opponents? Vexstar began to tire. His massive frame required enormous amounts of energy to maintain his fighting pace. Sweat poured down his gray skin as his breathing became labored. Te-Ho showed no signs of fatigue. His movements remained fluid and controlled. If anything, he seemed to be getting stronger as the fight continued. This was another trait the aliens did not understand about humans. On Earth, the ability to outlast your opponents was often more important than being able to overpower them. Humans had evolved to run for hours, to fight for days, to never give up no matter how hopeless the situation became. How long can he keep this up? A Goric warrior asked his companions. "I do not know," came the reply. "I have never seen anything like this." Vextar realized he was in serious trouble. His usual tactics were not working. The humans seemed to anticipate every move he made. Worse, Teho was beginning to turn the Valkyrie's own strength against him. When Vextar threw a powerful punch, Teho would redirect it rather than block it, sending the warrior off balance. When Vextar tried to grapple, Teho would use leverage and momentum to escape, often putting the larger alien in a disadvantageous position. "Enough playing," Vextar growled, desperation creeping into his voice. He launched himself into a series of attacks so fast and violent that they seemed like a single continuous motion. It was his ultimate technique, the combat form that had never failed him in tournament or battle. Teho moved through the storm of claws and strikes like he was dancing. His body twisted and flowed, finding gaps in the attack that seemed impossible to exist. At the climax of Vextar's assault, when the warrior was fully committed and unable to defend himself, Teho struck. It was a simple move, a basic palm strike to the chest that any beginning fighter might attempt. But it was placed with surgical precision at exactly the right moment. Vextar's eyes went wide as the strike connected. The force traveled through his body in a way that disrupted his balance and breathing. He staggered backward, gasping for air. The crowd was completely silent. Their champion, the undefeated warrior who had never lost a fight, was clearly struggling against a human janitor. Teho stood calmly, waiting for Vextar to recover. He could have followed up with finishing moves that would have ended the fight immediately. Instead, he chose restraint. "Yield," he said quietly, so only Vextar could hear. "This does not have to continue." Vextar looked at the human with new respect. In offering mercy, Teho had shown something that few warriors ever displayed, true strength combined with wisdom, but Vextar was not ready to surrender. His pride as a Valkyrie warrior demanded that he continue fighting until he could no longer stand. "Not yet, human," he said, straightening up. "You have shown me that your species is more than I thought. Now let me show you what a Valkyrie does when truly challenged." The real fight was about to begin. Vextar's body began to change. His gray skin darkened to almost black as blood flow increased to his muscles. The bone plates along his spine locked into combat position with audible clicks. His claws extended to their full length, gleaming like polished metal under the training room lights. This was the war form of the Valkyrie, a biological transformation that turned them into living weapons. Few species in the galaxy had ever seen it used in personal combat. The crowd gasped and stepped back from the observation windows. Even through the energy shields, they could feel the danger radiating from the transformed warrior. "He is going to kill the human," Azenthi whispered. "Should we stop this?" Another alien asked, but no one moved to interfere. They were all too mesmerized by what they were witnessing. Teho watched the transformation without fear. He had seen worse things in his military career. On Kepler 442b, he had faced enemies who were specifically designed to kill humans. Compared to those nightmares, even an angry Valkyrie in war form was manageable. "Impressive," Teho said calmly. "But transformation does not change the fundamentals of combat." Vextar roared and attacked with inhuman speed. His war form gave him strength and reflexes far beyond his normal abilities. His claws could now cut through steel, and his bones were dense enough to stop most projectile weapons. But Teho had been expecting this escalation. He moved differently now, no longer holding back the skills that had kept him alive through dozens of impossible missions. His body flowed like liquid mercury, never where Vextar expected it to be. The alien commanders watching from the observation deck began to understand what they were really seeing. This was not a lucky human who had learned a few fighting tricks. This was a professional soldier showing his true capabilities. "Look at how he moves," a Gorok general said to his aide. "He is not fighting the warrior, he is fighting the situation." It was true. While Vextar focused on individual attacks and defenses, Teho was thinking several moves ahead. He controlled distance, timing, and positioning. He turned the fighting area itself into a weapon, using walls and corners to limit Vexstar's mobility. Captain Yanwu watched with growing amazement as Taeho demonstrated tactics that were uniquely human, where alien species relied on natural advantages or technological superiority. Humans had learned to use intelligence and adaptability. "He is hunting him," she said to Sojin. "What do you mean?" "Watch his eyes. He is not reacting to what Vexstar is doing now. He is predicting what Vexstar will do next. Humans are persistence hunters, Sojin. We do not overpower our prey. We outlast it, we outthink it. We wait for it to make a mistake." In the fighting area, that prediction was proving accurate. Vexstar's war form made him incredibly dangerous, but it also consumed enormous amounts of energy. He could not maintain this level of intensity for long. Taeho knew this. Every move he made was designed to force Vexstar to waste energy on attacks that had no chance of success. He led the warrior into long combinations that looked impressive but accomplished nothing. Meanwhile, Taeho's own attacks became more frequent and more accurate. He targeted pressure points and nerve clusters, causing cumulative damage that would slow Vexstar down over time. It was a strategy that required perfect timing and absolute confidence. One mistake would mean death or severe injury. But Taeho had learned this approach in situations where the stakes were even higher. The memory of the Proxima Station rescue came back to him clearly now. His team had been trapped in a section of the station with 30 hostiles between them and the extraction point. They had been outnumbered 10-1, with limited ammunition and no hope of reinforcement, but they had won by doing exactly what Taeho was doing now. They had turned their enemies' advantages against them. They had been patient when their opponents were impatient. They had been calm when their enemies were angry. They had fought like humans. Vexstar was beginning to realize that his war form might not be enough. The humans seemed to know exactly how to neutralize every advantage it gave him. Worse, Taeho was starting to look dangerous. Really dangerous. The calm, almost friendly expression the human had worn throughout the fight was changing. His eyes were becoming cold and focused. His movements were taking on a predatory quality that made Vexstar's warrior instincts scream warnings. "You were special forces," Vexstar said during a brief pause in the action. "I was a lot of things," Taeho replied. "What did your unit do?" "We solved problems that regular military could not handle." "What kind of problems?" Taeho's answer was quiet, but it carried clearly through the silent training room. "The kind where everyone dies if we fail?" The words sent a chill through the watching aliens. They were beginning to understand that they had not been watching a sparring match. They had been watching a demonstration of what humans were capable of when pushed to their limits. Vexstar made one final desperate attempt to end the fight. He gathered all his remaining strength for a finishing move that combined speed, power, and technique into a single devastating attack. It was perfectly executed. The kind of move that had made him a legend among warrior species across the galaxy. Taeho was ready for it. As Vexstar committed to his attack, Taeho stepped forward instead of back. He moved inside the warrior's guard, too close for the claws to be effective. His hands found precise grip points on Vexstar's arms and shoulders. What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but every alien in the room would remember it for the rest of their lives. Taeho used Vexstar's own momentum and strength against him. He redirected the warrior's charge into a throw that sent the massive alien crashing to the ground with bone-jarring force. Before Vexstar could recover, Taeho was on top of him. Not striking, not trying to cause injury, but positioned in a way that made it impossible for the warrior to continue fighting. It was a submission hold that would have been familiar to any human who had studied martial arts. Simple, effective, and completely unstoppable once properly applied. Vexstar struggled for a moment, then realized the truth. The fight was over. He had lost, but instead of the shame he expected to feel, there was something else: respect. The human had defeated him fairly, using skill rather than luck or trickery. "I yield," Vexstar said clearly. Taeho immediately released the hold and helped the warrior to his feet. The gesture of respect was not lost on the watching aliens. The training room was absolutely silent. Hundreds of alien warriors stared at the two fighters, trying to process what they had just witnessed. A human maintenance worker had just defeated one of the most feared warriors in the galaxy, but more than that, he had done it while showing mercy, restraint, and honor. He had fought not like a mindless beast, but like a true warrior. For the first time since humans had joined the galactic community, the other species began to see them not as weak servants, but as potential equals. The age of human underestimation was coming to an end. The silence in Training Room 1 stretched on for what felt like hours. Hundreds of alien warriors stood frozen, staring at the human who had just accomplished the impossible. Tejo helped Vexstar stand fully upright, checking to make sure the warrior was not seriously injured. The Valkyries' war form was already fading, his skin returning to its normal gray color as his body recovered from the transformation. "Are you hurt?" Tejo asked. Vexstar flexed his arms and rolled his shoulders, testing for damage. "My pride is wounded more than my body," he said. "You could have ended this fight much sooner, could you not?" Tejo nodded. "Several times. Why did you not?" "Because this was supposed to be a friendly sparring match," Tejo replied. "I saw no reason to hurt you." The answer rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. The human had been holding back. Even while demonstrating abilities that none of them had expected, he had still been restraining himself. Vexstar extended his hand to Tejo, in the traditional warrior's gesture of respect. "You fight with honor, Kim Tejo?" "I would be proud to call you brother in arms." Tejo clasped the offered hand. "The honor is mine, Commander Vexstar." Captain Yan Wu stepped down from the observation area and walked onto the training floor. Her presence immediately commanded attention from all the aliens present. "I think," she said clearly, "that this exhibition has taught us all something important today." Murmurs began to spread through the crowd as aliens started talking among themselves. The conversations were different now. Instead of jokes and laughter, there was serious discussion about what they had witnessed. "Captain," called out General Mordick, the senior Gorak commander on the ship, "we were told that humans have no significant military capabilities, that your species is suited only for support roles." Captain Yanwu smiled. "Who told you that?" "Your own diplomatic representatives. When humans first joined the Galactic Coalition, they presented your species as peaceful and non-threatening." "That is true," Captain Yanwu admitted. "We did present ourselves that way. But perhaps we were not completely honest about our capabilities." "Why?" asked Commander Zillaneth of the Zenthi forces. "Why hide your true nature?" Captain Yan Wu looked around the room, meeting the eyes of aliens from dozens of different species. "Because we have learned that being underestimated is often an advantage," she said. "While you see us as weak servants, we see and learn everything about you. We understand your tactics, your weaknesses, your fears. By the time you realize what we really are, it is often too late." The implications of her words sank in slowly. The aliens began to understand that they had been studied, analyzed, and categorized by a species they had dismissed as harmless. "How many more like him are there?" General Mordick asked, nodding toward Tejo. "Every human is like him," Captain Yanwu replied. "Some more than others, but all of us carry the same basic nature. We are all children of Earth." Sojin stepped forward. "Captain, perhaps you should explain about Earth." Captain Yanwu nodded. "We have told you that Earth is a garden world, pleasant and peaceful. This is a lie. Earth is what you would classify as a Class 12 death world." Gasps and shocked whispers filled the training room. Class 12 death worlds were considered nearly uninhabitable. Only the most dangerous and aggressive species evolved on such planets. "Everything on Earth is trying to kill everything else," Captain Yanwu continued. "The weather can freeze you solid or cook you alive. The animals are either predators that hunt you or prey that you must hunt to survive. The plants produce toxins, the insects carry diseases. Even the microscopic organisms will eat you from the inside." "But your cities," a Zenthi engineer protested. "Your peaceful civilization, built by 10,000 years of constant warfare," Captain Yanwu said. Every human city exists because our ancestors fought and died to carve out a small safe space in a world that wanted them dead. Every human alive today descends from millions of generations of survivors. The aliens looked at each other with new understanding. Suddenly, humanity's rapid technological development made sense. Their quick adaptation to space travel and alien contact became explainable. "We are not a peaceful species," Captain Yanwu said. "We are a species that chooses peace because we understand the true cost of war. There is a difference." Taeho had been quietly listening to the conversation while cleaning the minor cuts and bruises he had received during the fight. Now he spoke up. "Captain, with your permission, I would like to return to my duties." "Of course," Captain Yanwu said. "Thank you for the demonstration." As Taeho walked toward the exit, Vextar called out to him, "Human, Taeho." Taeho turned back. "Would you be willing to teach me some of your fighting techniques?" The question surprised everyone in the room. A decorated Valkyrie commander was asking a human janitor to train him. "I would be honored," Taeho replied. "But I should warn you, human combat methods require a lot of patience." "I have learned today that patience can be a weapon," Vextar said. "Perhaps it is time I added it to my arsenal." Over the following days, word of the sparring match spread throughout the ship and beyond. Other vessels in the fleet requested copies of the recording. Analysis teams studied every move Taeho had made, trying to understand the principles behind his fighting style. The betting pools that had been so confident in Vextar's victory were forgotten. Instead, aliens began approaching the human crew members with new respect. They asked questions about Earth, about human history, about the wars that had shaped their species. Training schedules were modified to include joint exercises between human and alien personnel. For the first time, humans were invited to participate as equals rather than servants. Taeho returned to his maintenance duties, but now his work took on a different character. When he walked the corridors, aliens stepped aside not out of dismissal, but out of respect. Some nodded to him as he passed. Others stopped to ask about his background or to request training advice. He still cleaned floors and repaired equipment, but everyone now understood that these tasks did not define him. They were simply jobs that needed to be done, performed, by someone who happened to be much more than he appeared. 3 weeks after the sparring match, Taeho was finishing his shift when Vextar found him in the maintenance bay. "Teacher," the Valkyrie warrior said, using the formal address that denoted deep respect. "Commander," Taeho replied, setting down his tools, "I have a request from my government. They want to establish a formal exchange program between Valkyrie warriors and human military instructors." Taeho considered this. That could be useful for both species. "They also want to know if you would be willing to come to Valkyrie Prime as a senior instructor. The pay would be considerable, and the position comes with great honor." "That is very flattering," Taeho said. "But I like my job here," Vextar laughed. "You prefer cleaning floors to training elite warriors?" "I prefer the peace," Taeho said. "Simply, for many years my life was nothing but conflict and violence. Here I can contribute to something positive while living quietly. That has value to me." Vextar nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand another aspect of human nature, the ability to find satisfaction in simple things after experiencing complex horrors. "The offer will remain open," he said. "If you ever change your mind, thank you." As Vextar left, Taeho returned to his work. Outside the maintenance bay windows, stars wheeled slowly past as the Nexus Prime continued its journey. Through space, the galaxy was changing. The balance of power was shifting as species began to reassess their relationships with humanity. Trade agreements were being renegotiated. Military alliances were being reconsidered, all because of a sparring match that was supposed to be a joke. Taeho smiled as he organized his tools for the next day's work. Sometimes the smallest actions had the largest consequences. That was another lesson Earth had taught its children. Never underestimate the power of being underestimated. The universe was about to learn just how much humans had been holding back.